everyone. Welcome back to Actual English. My name is Jennifer Clyde. It is a pleasure to have you back. Thanks for joining me. It's time for lesson 84, and today let's talk about pollution. Pollution. The topic may sound very simple, but once you get into it, once you start talking about pollution, wow, there's so much to talk about that we can't handle just in one lesson, but we'll try our best. Now, let me begin by asking you a question, though. Now, if someone were to ask you to define pollution, if someone were to ask you what is pollution, how would you answer that very simple and easy question? 한번 생각을 해보세요. 어렵죠? It's not easy. It's a very simple topic, but it's not as simple to talk about. So we'll help you talk about that today. Now, when something harmful is added to the environment, such as chemicals and things like that are very harmful, very fatal to animals, people, or other living things, well, it is, of course, what we call pollution. There are many forms of pollution. It can be caused by chemicals, it can be caused by industrial or commercial waste. Even our day-to-day activities could be a cause of pollution as well. There's noise pollution, there's air pollution, there's water pollution, and much, much more. So let's talk about that today. All right, let's begin with our first segment. It's time for Actual Talk.
I was recently in northeastern China in Tianjin, and I went for a weekend away, but it was a bit of a disaster because it was so smoggy. Like, we literally couldn't do any outdoor activities.
Oh, no. Yeah, China is suffering a lot from pollution, air pollution.
Sure, especially because it's like coming into wintertime now. Well,
Right.
It is wintertime, and everyone's got on their coal heating and using like fossil fuels, so the air quality dips severely.
Yeah, and I think it affects Korea a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, the smog kind of comes over here, or the dust, the yellow dust,
Yes.
I think it's called.
I think,
maybe.
we get yellow dust in the spring, then in the winter it's the smog, like from the terrible air pollution. It's a real problem.
It is a real problem. But I think that the Chinese government has been making some initiatives in decreasing or trying to control pollution in China.
I think they're definitely trying to do something about it, especially because of international pressure. Because it's not just China that's affected. When you've got air pollution, I remember when I was in secondary school back in the UK, we did case studies on Sweden, and they got lots of air pollution from the UK when they were doing everything they could to keep their environment clean. But then you can't block the flow of air.
Right, exactly. And I think overall, even though maybe Sweden felt it directly from or indirectly from the UK, I know that pollution worldwide is hurting the ozone layer. It's depleting the ozone layer. So in reality, it's affecting just the entire planet.
Yeah,
right?
That's what makes it so difficult to control, is that you need all the countries on board on like eco-friendly initiatives.
Right,
Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yes, so they have those CO2 initiatives where they're trying to cut down on CO2s, all the countries together.
Yeah, there was the Kyoto Agreement, which some countries didn't sign up for, and it seems that developing countries are exempt from some of those limits and things, right?
Yeah, which is kind of weird, but at the same time, I guess the country has to develop its economy.
Exactly. It's really difficult to balance, right? But I think it's really important that we cut down on pollution whatever way possible.
Now, that was an actual talk conversation about pollution in general, and I think Peter and Rachel did a wonderful job. Thanks to you guys. Okay, let's take it line by line then. They did cover a lot, and a lot of these sentences are quite long, so follow along comfortably. Try to relax. Don't tense up too much, okay? No pressure. Try to enjoy it. Now, Peter began by saying, he's talking about his recent experience. I was recently in northeastern China, in Tianjin, okay? So he's talking about his visit. And I went for a weekend, just a weekend, but it was a bit of a disaster. Why? Because it was so smoggy. Now, you can say that a trip that you took somewhere was a disaster. What does that mean? It means that you had a terrible experience. It was difficult, for example. You had a lot of difficulty. Now, Peter is saying that his trip or a weekend trip was a disaster because it was so smoggy. I think in Korean, the Korean way of saying this is smog, right? It's not O, it's smog, smoggy. Lots of fumes, chemical fumes, right? So there's a bit of fog and a lot of smoke and chemical fumes. And if the air is filled with all of this, if the air is filled with smog, we say that it is smoggy. So he says you literally couldn't do any outdoor activities, meaning you couldn't do anything outside. Now, Rachel says, yeah, China is suffering a lot from air pollution. That is one of our patterns for today. Suffer from something. It means that you experience unpleasantness, okay? Difficulty. You can suffer from a disease or an illness as well. So it means to have a very difficult time or to experience something very unpleasant. So China is suffering. They're having a difficult time, okay? A lot from because of air pollution. Now, Peter says, especially because it's winter time and everyone's got on. They have turned on their coal heating. We're talking about heating in general. Using what? Fossil fuels. In Korean, I believe it's 화석연료. So we're talking about fossil fuels here, okay? So the air quality, the quality of air, okay, dips severely. Here's a verb, to dip. I think when we have, let's say, for example, pizza or even breadsticks or cheese sticks or even chicken, for example, fried chicken, they sometimes give you a dip. 찍어 먹는 소스죠, okay? Now that is called a dip as a noun, but here, dip is used in the verb form. It means to drop suddenly, to plunge. 훅 떨어지는 거예요, suddenly. So we're talking about the air quality, how it dips severely, meaning air quality drops suddenly. 굉장히 나빠지다라는 말이에요. So it's true, because of all the heating going around using fossil fuels, the air quality drops suddenly. It becomes very, very bad. I think we get yellow dust in the spring. Yellow dust? Yeah, we all suffered from yellow dust quite recently, yellow dust. And then in the winter, it's the smog from the terrible air pollution. So Peter has mentioned two very important things. Okay, he has mentioned yellow dust, also called Asian dust, blowing in from China, and also smog. Yes, a lot of people have a difficult time because of smog in the winter time especially, or especially because of air pollution. It's a real problem. Yes, it is a serious problem. But I think that the Chinese government has been making some initiatives, okay? They're taking action, leading action in trying to control pollution in China. So basically she's saying that people in China, the Chinese government, are trying to control pollution in China. They're trying to do something about pollution in China. Now, especially because of international pressure they are getting from countries internationally, it's not just China that's affected, okay? Not just China that's affected, meaning a lot of other countries are affected as well. Not only China, not just China, but other countries as well. Now, Peter says, I remember when I was in secondary school, okay? Back in the UK. We're talking about a long, long time ago when he was a lot younger. We did case studies. This is like an analysis, I guess. It's a study where you analyze something, okay, to generalize something, okay? So it's like a study, a research, okay? They did a case study or case studies on Sweden, and they got lots of air pollution from the UK when they were doing everything they could to keep their environment clean. Now, this is a very long sentence from here to here. But first of all, Peter is talking about what? Number one, case studies that they did, okay, like a survey. They did some analyzing on Sweden. So the case studies were on Sweden. Okay, they did a survey, some studies on Sweden of how they were affected by air pollution from the UK when they were actually doing everything they could, doing everything possible, okay, to keep their environment clean. So he's just talking about his past experience. And then he says, but then you can't block the flow of it. block, 뭔가를 막다란 말인데요. can't, 막을 수 없었다. The flow of air, that's right. So air flows, it passes on. You can't stop it. So that's what he's saying. You cannot block the flow of air. Rachel says, right, exactly. And pollution worldwide is hurting the ozone layer. Okay? 오존이라고 하죠. The pronunciation is ozone. It's depleting. We went over this word quite recently. Dropping, right? Okay, something is disappearing. It's killing something, the ozone layer. So in reality, it's a pattern. In reality means realistically, okay? Realistically, it is affecting the entire planet. It's not only affecting one country, it is affecting the whole entire, okay? 100% of something, the entire planet, right? That's what makes it so difficult to control. That's right, because it has not only affected parts of the world, but it's affecting all parts of the world. It's very difficult to control. You can't block the flow of the air. You really can't do much about it. So it's difficult to control. You need all the countries, every single country, all the countries on board. What's on board? We board trains, we board buses, we board a plane. 타다, 올라타다란 말인데요. In this case, on board means to cooperate, take part, participate, for example. So you need all the countries on board. We need all the countries to participate in order to do what? On eco-friendly initiatives. And of course, Rachel agrees. Otherwise, if we don't do that, it's not going to work. We're not going to get good results. Here, let's move on to what Rachel says. So they have those CO2 initiatives. CO2 in English, carbon dioxide, right? Okay, where they're trying to cut down. Cut down means to decrease, lessen. Cut down on CO2s, or sometimes it's used without the S, in all the countries together. So this is something that people worldwide are concerned about. CO2, carbon dioxide. Right? Carbon emissions, for example. A cause of pollution, one of the causes is actually mode of transportation as well. So it's true that these days, a lot of people are trying to bike to work or even walk to work, move closer to their workplaces in order to protect the environment. Okay, that was a wonderful conversation between the two, so let's listen to it one more time.
I was recently in northeastern China, in Tianjin, and I went for a weekend away, but it was a bit of a disaster because it was so smoggy. Like, we literally couldn't do any outdoor activities.
Oh, no. Yeah, China is suffering a lot from pollution, air pollution.
Sure, especially because it's like coming into wintertime now. Well,
right.
It is wintertime, and everyone's got on their coal heating and using like fossil fuels, so the air quality dips severely.
Yeah, and I think it affects Korea a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, the smog kind of comes over here, or the dust, the yellow dust,
yes.
I think it's called.
I think, we get yellow dust in the spring, then in the winter it's the smog, like from the terrible air pollution. It's a real problem.
It is a real problem. But I think that the Chinese government has been making some initiatives in decreasing or trying to control pollution in China.
I think they're definitely trying to do something about it, especially because of international pressure. Because it's not just China that's affected. When you've got air pollution, I remember when I was in secondary school back in the UK, we did case studies on Sweden, and they got lots of air pollution from the UK when they were doing everything they could to keep their environment clean. But then you can't block the flow of air.
Right, exactly. And I think overall, even though maybe Sweden felt it directly from or or indirectly from the UK, I know that pollution worldwide is hurting the ozone layer. It's depleting the ozone layer. So in reality, it's affecting just the entire planet.
Yeah,
right?
That's what makes it so difficult to control, is that you need all the countries on board on like eco-friendly initiatives. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yes, so they have those CO2 initiatives where they're trying to cut down on CO2s, all the countries together. Yeah,
there was the Kyoto Agreement, which some countries didn't sign up for, and it seems that developing countries are exempt from some of those limits and things, right?
Yeah, which is kind of weird, but at the same time, I guess the country has to develop its economy.
Exactly. It's really difficult to balance, right? But I think it's really important that we cut down on pollution whatever way possible.
Okay, I'm sure you enjoyed the conversation one more time. Now, as a reminder, I do want to let you know that for our actual talk conversation, we sometimes do omit parts of the conversation, okay? So when you listen to it, again, especially after I take you through, you are going to hear parts of the conversation that I haven't gone over, okay? But listen to all parts of it, okay? All right, it's time for actual expressions. Let's go over some vocab words and then move on to today's wonderful and useful patterns. We've got smog and smoggy. We all know what smog is, but to help you pronounce the word correctly, here it is. As I mentioned, it's not smog, it's smog. Smog, A-W, that's where you drop your jaw. 턱을 하세요. Okay? smog. Good. Smog, smoggy, smog, smoggy. Synonyms, well, similar words are not clear, murky, or even hazy. That's when everything is just dark and gray, okay? The air is full of smog, it's smoggy, it's hazy. What about fossil fuel? Also, just to go over the pronunciation, fossil fuel, fuel. F-U-E-L could be pronounced as fuel, fuel, or even fuel, fuel, okay? Fossil fuel, fossil fuel. Okay, the next word is air quality, quality. Quality? No. The I sound isn't as strong. It's quality, quality, okay? Air quality. Also dip. As I mentioned in today's actual talk, dip was used in the verb form. 동사로 쓰였었죠? So in that case, it means to sink or to drop down suddenly. 훅 하고 떨어지는 거예요. Also yellow dust, 황사죠? Other words are yellow sand, also called Asian dust. We also talked about the ozone layer. Ozone here, 오존이 아니라요. Z 발음 정확하게 해주세요. It's ozone, ozone, ozone. Okay, wonderful. Let's move on to some patterns then. Now, to suffer from something, I mentioned it means to experience difficulty or unpleasantness, or even a disease or an illness. So let's check out some sample sentences. My brother suffers from the flu every year. The flu가 독감이죠. Always goes with the. My brother suffers from flu every year. 절대 아니고요. 독감이라고 하실 때 flu 할 때는 반드시 the와 함께 쓰셔야 돼요. Okay, one more time. My brother suffers from the flu every year. What about this one? He is suffering from, suffer from, severe depression. He is suffering from severe depression. Once again, it means to experience difficulty or unpleasantness, or even a disease or an illness. Let's move on to our next one. Do everything one could, okay, in order to do something, or do everything humanly possible to do something. They mean the same thing, but this is stronger. If you want to stress something, you can say do everything humanly possible. All right, let's take you through and take a look at some sample sentences. I'm doing everything I could. 내가 할 수 있는 건 다 한다. To do what? To protect the environment. I'm doing everything I could to protect the environment. Okay? What about this one? The doctor did everything, take it into the past, did everything humanly possible. stress it, to save the child. Okay? He did everything he could in order to save the child. Here we go one more time. The doctor did everything humanly possible to save the child. Okay. What about this one? In reality, I mentioned it means actually or realistically. So, Ted may look happy on the outside, but in reality, he's falling apart. Let's take a look at the sentence. Ted may look happy on the outside. 겉으로 보기에는 굉장히 행복해 보여요. But in reality, 현실적으로 사실은 he's falling apart. Fall apart means what? Having a very difficult time. Falling apart. 굉장히 힘든 경험을 하고 있다. Okay? He's having a lot of difficulty. He may look happy on the outside, but in reality, he's falling apart. What about this one? The idea seemed simple, but in reality, it was impossible to execute. So we're comparing two things, okay? Two very opposite things. A and B, or let's say A and Z, they're very different, so we're comparing the two. The idea seemed simple. It seemed very easy, but in reality, in actuality, it was impossible to execute. It was very difficult to execute. Okay, let's see. Let's move on to this one. This appears at the latter end of the conversation, the very last part. There was something where they mentioned in whatever way possible, for example. In every possible way, or in any and every possible way. Get stronger and stronger and stronger. If you want to stress it, use this. If you want to stress it even more, you can use this pattern. In whatever way, okay? Here we go. I'll be there to help you in whatever way, okay? It means you will do your best to do something, okay? What about this one? We try to save the boy in every possible way. To do one's best, to do everything you can in order to do something. That means in whatever way. In whatever way, once again, it means to do your best. Okay, everyone, that is a wrap for today's actual expressions. All right, that's all.
Pollution, lots of kinds of pollution. We have air pollution, water pollution, which are the two most common. I think living in Korea, especially Seoul, there's a lot of, the air quality is something that you notice that sometimes isn't as clean or fresh as you would expect it to be. But if you look at the fact that there's so many millions of people living in one city and there's so many cars, it's kind of to be expected. I think besides air pollution, just regular pollution, I mean the amount of trash that we throw away that either lands on the street, lands on piles, either on land or even worse in the ocean, and it's something that's accumulating and we should keep an eye on that.
So what did you think about today's actual story? Was it helpful? Would you have said the same thing he did? How would you have answered the question? Well, let's take you through. Now, he's mentioned two common types of pollution, which happen to be, what? Air pollution and water pollution. He said, there are lots of kinds of pollution. And he gave examples. Air pollution and water pollution, which are the two most common types of pollution. Okay, one more time. There are lots of kinds of pollution. Pollution 할 때 S 붙이지 마세요. Okay, there are lots of types or kinds of pollution. Air pollution and water pollution, which are the two most common. In Korea, especially in Seoul, air quality is something that you notice. Now, I threw poor in because I'm sure he was talking about poor air quality. Poor does not mean to have no money. It means bad in this case, okay? Bad. 나쁜, for example. So especially in Seoul, poor air quality is something that you cannot ignore. It's something that you notice easily. If you look at the fact that there are millions of people living in one city and so many cars, it is kind of expected. It is expected meaning it is natural. 자연스러운 일이다. 당연한 일이다. Okay? So there are so many people, millions of people living in one small city, and there are so many cars in one small city. So pollution is kind of expected. It's almost natural. Okay? It's obvious. It's inevitable. What about this one? I think besides air pollution, there is a large amount of trash that we throw away. That's true. That can also be a cause of air pollution. We should not do that. But it's true that the Korean government is doing everything they can to, of course, throw trash away the proper way to, of course, help protect the environment. So one more time, I think besides air pollution, in addition, you're adding more information. There is a large amount of trash that you and we throw away. All right, that is a wrap for today's actual story. Have a listen to it one more time.
Pollution, lots of kinds of pollution. We have air pollution, water pollution, which are the two most common. I think living in Korea, especially Seoul, there's a lot of, the air quality is something that you notice that sometimes isn't as clean or fresh as you would expect it to be. But if you look at the fact that there's so many millions of people living in one city and there's so many cars, it's kind of to be expected. I think besides air pollution, just regular pollution, I mean the amount of trash that we throw away that either lands on the street, lands on piles, either on land or even worse in the ocean. And it's something that's accumulating, and we should keep an eye on that.
So today we talked about pollution. Climate change was another topic that we went over, which is a global issue. Everyone is concerned about Earth, the place we live. We need to survive, and in order to do so, we need to protect it. So pollution is a topic that you can talk about with anyone. Get together with your friends, talk about it, or even, throw the question at someone. So what is pollution? What are the problems? What can we do to protect the environment? Okay, get some practice on your own. Next time we'll talk about natural disasters such as tsunamis, for example. Okay, really scary things that happen around us in the world. Reminds us of what happened in the Philippines quite recently. So that's our topic for next time. In the meantime, come to our homepage. Find your way over to www.ebse.co.kr. You know what to do. Look for Actual English with Jennifer and come by to say hello. I love reading your messages, so yeah, come by and leave us a simple message. That is all for today. I'll catch you again next time. Bye for now.